There's something happening outside your window right now that most people have already stopped noticing. Think back to a few years ago. Maybe you remember mornings that sounded different, a yard that felt alive, robins moving through the grass before you even had your coffee, sparrows at the feeder before the sun was fully up, cardinals in the bushes like small flames. Now think about this morning. How many birds did you actually see? How many did you hear? If the answer feels smaller than it used to, you're not imagining it. Something is happening across America in neighborhoods just like yours, and most people have no idea what's actually causing it. This isn't a story about climate change. It's not about habitat loss in some distant rainforest. It's about something far closer to home. Something you may have unknowingly changed. Something that happened quietly, right in your own yard. Before we go deeper, if you've ever looked outside and felt like something was missing from your yard, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because what I'm about to show you changes how you see your yard forever. Scientists at Cornell University have been tracking bird populations across North America for decades, and in 2019, they published a number that stopped the entire research community cold. 3 billion. That's how many birds North America has lost since 1970. Not thousands, not millions, 3 billion birds gone. That's nearly 1 in 3 birds that existed in your grandparents' lifetime simply no longer here. But here's what makes this even more unsettling. The birds disappearing fastest aren't the rare ones. They aren't the exotic species in remote wilderness areas. They're the everyday birds, the ones you grew up with. The house sparrow, the barn swallow, the common starling, the eastern meadowlark. The birds that used to fill ordinary American yards like background music are vanishing in plain sight. And the question researchers kept asking was this: why are the common birds disappearing? Why is it happening in the most ordinary places? The answer is far more personal than most people expect, because it turns out birds don't just disappear because of what's happening in the wild. They disappear because of what's happening right where you live. Here's something most people don't realize about birds. They aren't just passing through your yard randomly. Birds are running constant calculations. Every single time they enter a space, they're asking a question that's been hardwired into them for millions of years. Is this place safe enough to stay? And that question gets answered by hundreds of tiny signals. Signals that exist in your yard right now, whether you realize it or not. The first signal? Sound. Birds communicate safety through layered sound. When one species is calm and singing, other species read that as a green light. A yard filled with birdsong is a yard that says, "Come in, it's safe here." But a yard that goes silent, that's a red flag broadcast across every bird within earshot. Now here's where it gets strange, because the silence isn't always caused by predators. Sometimes the silence is caused by us. Researchers at the University of Washington conducted a now famous study on crows. They wanted to understand how birds respond to specific human faces. So they created masks and wore them while interacting with crows in different ways. Some masks were neutral, some were threatening. What happened next surprised even the researchers. The crows didn't just remember the masks, they taught other crows which faces to avoid. They passed that information down through behavior, through alarm calls, through watching each other. Let that sink in for a moment. A bird you've never directly threatened may already know your yard is complicated because another bird told it so, because birds don't experience your yard the way you think they do. They experience it through a network of shared intelligence, a living, breathing communication system that most humans never see. But if birds have this incredible ability to communicate safety, why are so many of them still leaving? What changed in American yards that birds found unsafe enough to abandon? The answer comes down to something researchers call structural silence. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. Picture the American yard from 50 years ago. Messy hedgerows along the fence line, overgrown corners where nothing was trimmed, leaf piles that sat through winter, old trees with rough bark and hollow sections, weedy patches that nobody bothered to pull, imperfection everywhere. Now, picture the modern American yard. Clean edges, manicured lawn, decorative plants chosen for appearance, not function. Leaf blowers clearing every fallen thing, pesticides keeping the grass uniform and green, perfect and silent. Because here's what birds actually need that most modern yards no longer provide: They need structure. Not bird feeders, not bird baths. Structure. Layered vegetation, low shrubs, mid-level bushes, tall trees. That creates what ecologists call vertical habitat. That's where birds nest. That's where they hide from predators. That's where they forage. That's where they feel safe enough to stay. And here's the part that changes everything: the insects.
Over the last 50 years, America has lost an estimated 45% of its insect population. Not because of some distant environmental disaster, because of the plants in our own yards. Most ornamental plants sold at garden centers across America are non-native species. They look beautiful, but they produce almost no insects, and birds need insects. A single clutch of baby chickadees requires between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars just to survive to fledging. Take away the insects, take away the native plants that feed them, and you don't just lose bugs, you lose the entire food chain starting in your yard. I want you to think about something. Every bird that ever visited your yard chose it. Out of every yard in your neighborhood, out of every tree on your street, it landed in yours. And somewhere inside that tiny creature, in a brain the size of your thumbnail, it made a decision. This place is worth returning to. Birds don't visit yards out of obligation. They visit because the yard offers something: safety, food, shelter, life. When the birds stop coming, they're not being stubborn. They're not randomly moving on. They're responding to something real, something that shifted. And most of the time, it shifted gradually enough that we didn't notice until the yard was already quiet. Here is what makes this story different from a simple environmental warning. Because unlike deforestation in the Amazon, unlike melting glaciers thousands of miles away, this is something you can actually change, one yard at a time, one decision at a time. Plant one native shrub where a decorative non-native stands. Leave one corner of your yard unmown through winter. Let one pile of leaves stay where it falls. Stop one round of pesticide in one season. It sounds almost too simple. But researchers tracking urban bird recovery have documented something remarkable. When even a small percentage of yards in a neighborhood shift toward native planting and reduced pesticide use, birds return. Not in decades, in seasons. The silence in your yard isn't permanent. It isn't inevitable. It's a message. And like all the best messages birds send, it was there the whole time, waiting for someone to finally pay attention. The next time you step outside in the morning, before the noise of the day begins, stand still for a moment. Listen, because what you hear, or what you don't hear, is your yard telling you something true, something most people walk right past without ever stopping. And now you'll know exactly what it means. If this changed how you see your yard, share it with someone who still has birds visiting theirs, because the best way to bring them back is to make sure the people around you understand what's happening too. Like this video, subscribe if you want to see what birds are actually communicating when they do come back, and drop a comment below. Tell me, when did you last hear a bird in your yard? I read every single